we are going to be looking at bolts now. So these are the 4 main bolts we'll be using. And you will be using primarily these 3. This one you'll use rarely. Now, why does it matter what size bolt you use? Well, if you're having to screw on one of these, you would much rather put on a small one. If you notice there, I can get this one on, of course I'm struggling, pretty quickly. If I would go to use a bigger one, it's going to take a lot longer to get through. Another reason why is if I have this on the inside of my pull toy or any other part I'm building, as I'm attaching on it, this will get in the way of many of my other parts. So you do not want to do that. So you want the shortest one possible as long as it can get through the metal. If you are going to be having it go through something, so for example, this is called a bearing. It's a 3-hole bearing. Anytime you use a shaft, you need to have a bearing. You put the bearings typically on the outside, but you can put it on the inside. Again, you want to have a bolt that is long enough. Again, you want to have wherever, if you're going to be, especially if you're going to be attaching a wheel, you want to have the rounded side sticking closest to the wheel. So you would put that on there. And you do not have to, again, it works best to have it in the middle, to have the middle hole open for your shaft, but you don't have to, depending on, sometimes your build might require you off-center it. But it does, you do want to have both filled in. Now notice, you can hand tighten most of these by having the nut on there. You don't need to use the other parts. Now, if you should need to tighten it tighter than what you feel like you can get with the you can use an Allen wrench. Now there are 2 sizes of Allen wrenches. We have a green one, and then we have the dark black one. If you look at them, it's kind of hard to tell. It's not focusing for me. They are slightly different sized. The black ones are what fits in here. Again, you don't need it. This needs to be tightened. Again, hand tightening works best because you don't want to over tighten. You can ruin the screw so that it can never come off, and then you're really in trouble. Now, when would we use this? Well, you'll use that when you might have something like here. This is a lock washer. This will help keep things on your shaft. So again, loosen it. It goes on here. Now, why would you put one of these on? I'll show you. So put it on there again. These you can't you have to use the tool for. Once you get any bit of resistance, you just don't want it moving on there. Now, when I put, let's say, my wheel on, now this wheel moves around. Well, I would just stick another one on there on the outside. Tighten it. Again, doesn't need to be super tight, but as long as you get resistance. Now this is not moving anywhere. That way my wheel will stay on the shaft just fine. So if I was to put this through here, now this is not okay. I have metal touching metal. 2 reasons why is, first off, if you notice, all the holes in all the Vex parts are square. The shafts, again, you can't really tell, but I promise you, they're square. A square and a square, it does not really turn as well. You hear that metal hitting, that's, again, resistance, where when I go through the bearing, much smoother. So now I have a bearing on both sides. I can have going through here. Now if you notice, I really didn't need to have this way on that. That doesn't need, because it's not going to go anywhere, because it's going to be through here. But now, okay, now you want is a spacer. Spacer is a little plastic part. This will keep the wheel a little bit away from the bolts so you don't hit it. Now that I have this on here, again, if you notice, the spacer here keeps it away from. Now again, the wheel is going to fall off this way. I need to have one of these to tighten it up. Now there are two different ones. We have these, but there are also rubberized ones. A piece of rubber. These work by resistance. They're really hard to push on. I would not recommend one if you're having to go through the shaft that far. Only do ones, maybe you have a little bit of a shaft at the end. Again, I'm going to use one of these all the way to the end, using my green Allen wrench. Turning it, turning it, turning it until, oh, it's a little bit of resistance. Now again, the shaft's a little wobbly. That's why my wheel's a little wobbly, but otherwise it turns pretty nicely. There's going to be times when you want to attach pieces together. There are a couple of these longer pieces like this, two different kinds. We have the ones that are U-shaped, and then we have the ones that are more L-shaped. So it has a bottom, but not a top. Also, the ends are a little bit different. This one has an end. So this one has edges around 3 of the 4 sides, where this one only has on 2, the top and the bottom. They both can be used for a lot of parts. So let's say I want to, again, we're building our chassis. We don't want to use a single, big plate because you can't fit things going through the middle. Instead, you might want to build, something, you get the idea of it. When you're attaching these, again, use smaller screws. This one you probably need just the smallest screw. Now, even though these slide, it won't be a big deal for this if you tighten it. So, hard to tell. I'm going through here. Going to, now again, this is where it gets kind of tricky sometimes, getting the nut on there. Now, I might be having a little trouble, so instead maybe just stick it down and reverse it. Now I can use the Allen wrench to tighten it. Again, as you're tightening it, do not over tighten. I always recommend doing the longer side because it's pretty hard to over tighten when you do that. Once you get a little bit of resistance, you're done. Now, might it move a little bit? Yeah. But as you add other parts to this, it will strengthen up. Do the exact same thing from the other side of my chassis. Don't need a long screw. So now I have 2 parts of my chassis. That's the other part. You want to make sure you have some strength there. You will find all the nuts, the bolts, the bearings, shaft collars, all those will be in bins like this. They will even hopefully be labeled. Only grab, a handful at a time, or not too many, again, but we unfortunately do not want you putting them back, so you'll have to hold on to them. We'll talk about that later. To find larger pieces, such as base plates and other large metal plates, you will find in the cabinet that looks like this. It will be better organized hopefully soon, as I'm in the process of cleaning up what last quarter destroyed. To find large sprockets and gears, they are in the cabinet next to the blue one. That's where you'll find the larger gears and larger sprockets, along with the ones that are odd-shaped for doing some of the other types of gears. To find smaller gears and other smaller parts, you will come over to these. These are mostly organized pretty well. I've already gotten through these. These will hopefully be pulled out. In case I forget, we can pull them out. There's two sides to them. Again, they should be organized by part, but as you know, students sometimes don't always put parts back correctly. So that's where you'll find all of these parts. Each student will get 2 shafts, 12-inch shafts, and a baggie of Allen wrenches. Those Allen wrenches, we have the long green one, which is the 5/64, and then the smaller one, which is a 3/32. 3/32. Now this one, while the 3 might think it's smaller, again, if you reduce the fractions, there is actually larger. You will get those, so you will put those back in your baggies. Put those, and you'll also get a bin. You'll put it in the bin. All of your supplies at the end of each day. Anything you build, any parts you have touched. Again, we are not sharing parts, so please only grab parts you plan to use. When you are done with your parts for the day, you'll each be assigned a cabinet. You'll put your bin in the cabinet and close the cabinet. Now no one will touch any of your stuff. Again, you do not put parts back until the very end of the build.